Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've done it. You've got right the way through 2 days of fairly intense discussion, a lot of it extremely valuable. I've learned a great deal from it. I hope you have too. One of the things that the organizers have asked me to do both days is to just summarize as quickly as I can some of the key features that have emerged out of the discussions we've had during these 2 days. It's a tall order to try and fit it all into a short space of time because there have been a lot of valuable lessons, but I'll give it a go. One of the things that struck me this morning was Ben Salama from Accenture talking about the scale of the opportunity that he and Accenture see within the industrial IoT. There's been a heck of a lot of focus in the discussions that we've had within our magazine, within your discussions amongst your colleagues about consumer IoT. A lot less, I suspect, about the industrial IoT, and yet that underpins so much of what we know as M2M. And he sees a $12 trillion opportunity there. Now, sometimes one could quibble with these figures, but whatever one, however much of a margin of error there might be in there, we're still talking about a massive scale of opportunity. But that scale creates vast data. The phrase big data seems to be giving way to vast data, and I make no apologies for that because I think it's increasingly true. He rightly points out that it is too expensive to transport such large amounts of data around the network, so it's far more likely that we should expect to see data handled at the edge of the network, and I think that makes perfect sense. He sensibly says that there has been no killer app for the IoT for consumers, so we shall have to see what comes of the industrial IoT. One of the things that also I wanted to pick up on, and I've heard it at other events, and I think it bears repeating, is that kind of change that he described this morning is a change that affects companies, particularly in the manufacturing sector, where they change from being a product company to becoming a service company. And it's easy to be glib about that and to overlook what that means. Saying that in a conference is the easiest thing in the world, but actually going back to an organization of the scale of Michelin in the tire sector or Jaguar Land Rover in the automotive sector and saying, as of today, we are no longer a product company, we are now a service company. And increasingly, I think we're going to see this as the case. This is where revenues and new revenues, as he described them, unexpected revenues, may lie. So we have to keep an open mind for these unconventional revenues. Samsung spoke very eloquently about the growth of wearables, and I think we all know that this is a market that has yet to achieve its potential, partly because of the limitations of space and battery life in the chips that he described. I don't need to go into a great deal of detail on that. I think we're all familiar with that. But if he's correct, and that in 2013, less than 1% of data generated in the IoT and M2M was actually processed, then clearly we have a job of work to do as an industry. I was struck by the difference in approach between two car companies, both of whom were quite happy to share the platform, but came at it from very different directions. BMW, who seem, with their connected vehicles and their intent to gather all kinds of data, to give them their due, to credit them, it is intended to benefit the customer just as much as it benefits BMW. But the approach that's taken by Tesla seems to be very different. Whilst they may agree that there are a vastly greater number of connected vehicles on the roads now, 84 million in 2014, growing to 290 million in 2020, where they seem to disagree is in that Tesla is focusing on the car itself, not on the customer's data. In fact, they say that they are only interested in checking and updating the car's status, updating the software over the air. In the panel, Stefan said, and I quote, "We use data to develop the car, but not for where customers are, when, or why." So Tesla is a driving iPhone. I like that. I hadn't heard that one before, but I'll look at a Tesla in a different light in future. So BMW is keen to be at the forefront of Drive Now, giving owners and users, and I specifically differentiate between car owners and car users, the possibility of having regular and ready access to a vehicle. This seems to be the way of Generation Y. It's not my way, but it may be yours, I don't know. Green Pocket, that was an interesting differentiation. Suddenly we were confronted with a number of different ways in which a wide range of services are being offered in energy management today. There's energy transparency for consumers, using your favored device. There's energy saving, which is encouraged by companies like O-Power, using social media and even gaming techniques to try and encourage people to compete with one another. There are smart heating controls and smart cooling. Tado, for example, detecting your location so that the system, the application, can apply the rules that you personally have set. Then there's lighting. Again, location is key. Are you in a room, and how should it be lit? Then there was the standby killer. I think anyone who has an environmental interest would certainly be well aware of how much power is wasted, how much energy is wasted by machines left on standby overnight. And then finally, security, where it's possible now to automate a response to intrusion. You may laugh at an automated dog bark, but if it serves to speed the removal of an intruder from your property, then it's probably worth a try. Komatsu came at it from a different, came at the IoT from a very different angle, as you might imagine. Who knew that there are so many steps on the road towards autonomous mining? I certainly didn't. Manned operations, assisted operations, remote control, and then somewhere in 5 years' time, tele-remote control, though they do indicate that it's already being in trial. Semi-autonomous, fully autonomous, maybe 20 years away. And then finally, mining 4.0. RWE, Dr. Daniel was talking about the importance, amongst other things, of fraud prevention. And fraud prevention is something that gets too little discussion within the media. We're trying to rectify that, but you will have your own opinions on this. And I think some of the work that they're doing to ensure that switch boxes are not piggybacked by consumers who want to use RWE's network for their own internet access on a free basis, well, it's to be encouraged. We've all got a benefit to gain from a successful business model there. I also had no idea until I heard Jürgen Haase of Ooredoo how many smart city applications are already under trial or in application in greenfield sites within the Ooredoo footprint. And it's a massive footprint. I mean, we're talking 500 million potential customers within their footprint. So let's not overlook it just because it's not in our back door, in our back garden. They're looking at education, e-health, weather forecasting, smart cars, smart transportation, smart energy and utilities, smart buildings. If I've missed any, I apologize to Jürgen. Then just GSMA's Svetlana Grant spoke this afternoon. And before I go any further, I think credit to the GSMA for being an organization based in with a history and a legacy of cellular network members. It concentrates now, or it is increasingly concentrating on the expected rise of low-power, wide-area solutions. So there could be 2.7 billion new devices in that category by 2020, and they're right to recognize it. They were talking about how different the IoT is from traditional mobile services. And Svetlana talked about the vast range of new devices, the new business models. Again, something that I think needs a lot more coverage. And we'll be coming back to that in M2M now. Global distribution and managed services, revenues from value-added services, permanent insertion of SIMs, which took us neatly to Simulity later on in the discussion. But first, Jamalta, Letitia J, she echoed one of the things that I concluded from yesterday's meeting. You need to protect what matters. You need an appropriate level of protection if you're concentrating on security. When we had our panel discussion yesterday, we were talking not about maximum security for every application, but an appropriate level of security, be it vending or be it heart care. So you need to have privacy and security protected to an appropriate level. And she gave various indicators of how that can be done. But trust builds smart infrastructures, trust the device, trust the data, learn to trust the network, and create the system to trust the ecosystem. And finally, Simulity, who talked about the pros and cons of SIMs. The pros being obviously standard, global, secure. The cons being size, although they are reducing. And the fact, for example, that they are bound to an MNO and that there may be issues around regulation in the years to come. So there is clearly a role for the embedded EUICC. I don't think there's any doubt of that. The question is, how big is that role and how much will companies like Simulity make of it? And finally, to Amazon, too fresh in our minds for me to need to review in any great detail. If you want to know more, Michael is outside and more than capable, far better equipped than I am to give you a refresher. All I would like to say is it's been an absolute pleasure to be here over the last 2 days, to bring you such a range of talent put together by the M2M Alliance again. I wish them every success in their 10th event next year. I hope to join you here next year if you are here too. But I think once again, they deserve a huge round of applause for what they've done. So thank you for your attendance. Thank you for their hard work in putting it together. And I look forward to seeing you here next year.